49ers Ultimate Report. This is John Jay, your 49ers reporter, opinionist, analyst, and die-hard fan. Welcome to another episode of the 49ers Ultimate Report. I am John Jay, and today we are having a premiere video. So this is a pre-recorded video. Hopefully you guys still interact in the chat. Leave your questions in the comments. I will interact with you guys in the chat because this is a pre-recorded video. So I will be still talking to you guys, saying what's up to you in the chat. Also, something's a little bit different because, again, it's a premiere show. Usually, John Jay is on the other side. He's on the other side. But Shifty is now in charge of the stream. What's up, Shifty? Thanks for tuning in.
Of course, man. Always a pleasure to be here. You know, like you and I, we both know what we're going to talk about. It's crazy news that happened with the 49ers. Stoked to be here, stoked to talk about it. And yeah, just happy to be here, man.
Yeah. So a lot of new things, a lot of new features here on the 49ers Ultimate Reports. But Shifty, don't we usually do a show every Thursday? Unfortunately, Shifty, we had to come back on here to talk about something that happened Thursday night. Thursday night, everyone talked about it Friday, and now you and I are going to talk about. But you see the ticker at the bottom. Basically, it's already old news. But I wanted to have the Candlestick Point Report guys, the boys, talk about this for a little bit. As we entered, tomorrow, because today is Saturday, the game against the Kansas City Chiefs. But I want to get your thoughts, your opinions about the Christian McCaffrey trade.
Well, I'm really excited to hear your thoughts, but I will give my thoughts first. So I am really, really torn on this. Here's the reason why I'm torn on it. Like, I'll kind of break it down into positives and negatives. Positives: Christian McCaffrey is the best running back we've had on this team since Frank Gore, no question. He can run the ball, he can catch the ball. He actually is, in terms of statistically, is very comparable to a guy like Marshall Faulk, who got traded from the Colts to the Rams. The Rams went on to win a Super Bowl, greatest show on turf. I think obviously that's what the 49ers are looking for. Some other positives too. He's a great fit for what Shanahan does. He's one of those guys, and what Shanahan and this offense calls for is for you not only to be just a very good football player, but to be versatile. So you can line up McCaffrey in the backfield. You can line him up wide out. He can run the ball. He can catch. He can block. He can do everything. So that when you look at it, imagine just a formation. And I this is what I've been thinking about, is Garoppolo shotgun, Debo to his right, McCaffrey to his left, Kittle, Ayuk, Jennings, or Gray, or whoever. The defense has no idea, zero clue what on earth we're going to do. So there's a lot of really positives there. We know Christian McCaffrey, a very, very good running back, and he's proven himself in the NFL. I think the last guy who's had 1,000 rushing yards and 1,000 receiving yards, only a couple of people in the NFL have ever done that. He's one of them. So that's really good. And we know what McCaffrey, like running routes, running the football, he's going to bring a lot to this offense. So that's all great, and that's all well and good. And I think the big thing is we have him under contract through 2025. Now, in my opinion, what's going to happen is we're probably going to restructure the contract, and then that'll actually reduce his cap hit over the next few years. And that allows us to sign Ayuk and Bosa and everyone else. But why am I a little bit hesitant on this? We gave up quite a few picks, a second, a third, and a fourth next year, and a fifth in the year after. Now, we do have at least 2 compensatory picks in the third round next year because of the Saleh, Martin Mayhew, Mike McDaniel, potentially another one, if I'm not mistaken, if D'Amico Ryans gets hired as a head coach. So we still potentially have 3 third-round picks. But the other thing, too, is McCaffrey, the last few years, he's missed quite a few games between 2020 season, 2021, and so far this year he hasn't missed any games, but the last 2 seasons before, he's missed 23 games. Now, the guy's only 26. However, here is a concern of mine, and there was no I think with McCaffrey, and I'd be happy to be corrected whether by yourself, John Jay, or by someone in the comments, I don't think it was ever ACL or an Achilles, or it was nothing major. It was always like a sprain here or a sprain there. I guess my one concern is, like, have we already seen McCaffrey at his best, or is his best yet to come? We
Mhm.
don't know.
Yeah.
He's a great fit for the offense. He causes a lot of mismatches for opposing defenses, but we don't know what kind of McCaffrey we're going to get. And here's the thing, just 2 or 3 years ago, right? You remember who was the best running back in football 2 or 3 years ago? Todd Gurley.
Mhm.
Who's the guy who basically said, I'm retiring right now? Todd Gurley.
Mhm.
So I don't want it to be a case of like in 2024, McCaffrey's like, you know what? My career's done. Because then it's like, okay, we probably lost out on the trade. However, with all that being said, there's a lot of positivity around the 49ers right now, simply because we get McCaffrey. A lot of guys are coming back, apparently going to play on Sunday,
Mhm.
tomorrow. Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Jimmy Ward, Mike McGlinchey, Samson Ebukam, Talanoa Hufanga, maybe Mooney Ward. And then you add in a McCaffrey. And now I don't know how much McCaffrey's going to play tomorrow against the
Mhm.
Chiefs, but you think about him moving forward, especially after the bye week.
Mhm.
He's going to be a huge part of the offense. But look, it's one of those things where the Rams, they traded a whole bunch of stuff for, Von Miller and Matt Stafford, and they won a Super Bowl. So to them, that was worth it.
Mhm.
I think we traded a bunch for Trey Lance, and I think I still believe in Trey Lance, but trading away a bunch of first round picks for him, all these picks for McCaffrey. Of course, if we go on to win a Super Bowl this year, which I think we could, then it's worth it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, if we don't, and then we have to lose some guys to free agency because cap hits, then people are going to second question this
Mhm.
move. And so that's my whole rant. Because I've been thinking about this all day long. So I'm
Mhm.
going to leave it now. And John, I want to hear your thoughts and what you have to say.
So I'm very excited for Christian McCaffrey to return back to, you know, the college he attended here in the Bay Area. He went to Stanford, and I agree with you when it comes to the injury history. And we're going to go through some of the stuff more in detail. We will talk about the draft picks. We'll talk about the pros and cons. We'll talk about those 2 seasons where he was injured, and also we'll talk about how he's going to be used in the backfield. And again, this is a risk reward. And John Lynch, we got Nick Bosa who had injury concerns, but when he's on the field, this guy's a monster. He's a monster. Jason Verrett is a good reminder. When he's healthy, he was good in 2020. Has not played. Has not played since 2020. The season's moving on, so that's why John Lynch brings in these players. They're high risk, high reward. That's why they brought him in here. I also agree with you when it comes to running the football. Our running backs get hurt. I talked about it yesterday. Our running backs, Elijah Mitchell, was out for 8 weeks. He will be eligible in 2 weeks to return. Worst case, in 3 weeks to return. Ty Davis Price just returned, but they are not rushing him. So it shows you that we have to have some concern when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. But if Christian McCaffrey, who's played all 6 games so far this season, and if he's able to finish the last 11 games with the Niners, and he's able to be productive, I'm not asking him to carry the ball 15 to 20 times, catch the ball between 5 and 6 times per game. As long as we do not overwork him, just like Debo Samuel, we don't overwork him, it's going to be a really, really good deal for the 49ers. So that's just my thoughts about it. Any final thoughts before we move on?
Well, number one, and I feel like I end up my last segment being quite negative, being like, what if it doesn't work out and all this stuff. But I am really excited to see the offense with Christian McCaffrey, like the different formations, the different plays. It's going to be really exciting to see Christian McCaffrey out there with the 49ers. I think he's really going to help this offense in a lot of different ways. But, and I think you made a great point too, is that in Carolina, he was the guy. The offense ran through Christian McCaffrey. And here's the great thing in San Francisco, there might be 1 or 2 games this season, maybe 3 or 4 games in the second half of the season where we have to run the offense through him. But we don't have to week in and week out rely on that. We can also get Debo the ball. We can get Kittle the ball. Ayuk, Elijah Mitchell will be back after the bye week. I mean, if you have Debo, Ayuk, Kittle split out wide, and then Mitchell and
Mhm,
McCaffrey in the backfield, I mean, the defense is still like, we don't know what the hell's coming. Like, we know,
mhm,
should we have like five defensive backs, six defensive backs, like we don't know what to do.
mhm,
And that's the great thing with McCaffrey is that, he brings so many different mismatches, and he's a really good football player.
mhm,
Of course, my hope is he stays healthy. And I think ideally he will, because I don't think he's going to be used nearly as much as he was in Carolina, especially against the Chiefs and the Rams. I think we're going to have McCaffrey out there, especially against the Rams. I think
mhm,
he will be out there tomorrow against the Chiefs. He'll be out there for some plays. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more he'll be there, play action, try and throw it to Kittle, something like that.
mhm.
But it's very exciting. So that's a great thing. I mean, and we're getting a lot of our defensive players back too.
Yeah.
So and I respect the fact that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are like, we're not screwing around here. We're going for it.
Mhm,
We are right now in a Super Bowl window.
mhm,
We are in a window where we can win a Super Bowl. Even with Garoppolo, a quarterback, we can win a Super Bowl. So I
mhm,
like the fact that they're like, we're going all in because, and you can point to good and bad draft picks, but we give up a second, third, fourth, and whatever. But like maybe that second round pick next year is another Dante Pettis. Maybe the third round pick is another Trey Sermon, so on and so forth. So um, I love the fact that they went all in.
yeah.
But I mean, but there is a part of me which is like,
Mhm.
man, I feel like if we just waited for Elijah Mitchell to come back, then we might still be pretty good offense. So
Yeah. True, true, true. And one thing during the conversation, as I put the new ticker up there, as you already talked about it, how will CMC or Christian McCaffrey be used with the 49ers? And you already talked about it. So I wanted to talk about it a little bit more in depth about that. So there's a channel called Jay in the Bay. You know him. I know him. He's a really good. So shout out to him if he's watching. But
what's
Jay in the
good?
Bay asked me this question, during when the trade happened. He says, "How do you think we're going to use them?" So I'm like, "Listen, this is a great question." And during the show, it popped in my head. Look how we use Debo Samuel. Guess what? We have another Debo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. Imagine you line up Debo and Christian McCaffrey at the backfield. Oh my gosh, what do you want to do? And one of them goes in motion. Oh my God, are they giving it to Debo? Are they giving it to McCaffrey? Wonderful, wonderful situation for us. What a difficult situation for us. Who do you give the ball to when you have two explosive players? Okay. Second, what if they both line up right next to each other in the pass game? Who do you cover? Who do you leave wide open? What do you do? That's another wonderful situation. So I know you already talked about it, but talk about some formations you think Christian McCaffrey, the Niners are going to use him.
Well, I think the biggest thing is, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, is that I mean he can do anything, and he can do everything, and that's one of the things also not only that you said, but that Kyle Shanahan said. He can catch the ball, he can run with the ball, he can block too, and we all know with Kyle Shanahan that's a big thing. But when I look at Christian McCaffrey, what really surprised me was I knew that he was athletic. I knew that he could run routes, but just how good he ran routes is pretty amazing. Like, honestly, when he goes splits out wide and he runs routes, he reminds me of like a Julian Edelman type guy. So you imagine you have a basically what we acquired as a Julian Edelman type receiver, but not only that, a fantastic running back who really does fit the scheme. He fits what we do, where he basically, let's say if we run an outside zone, he can start going that side, make a quick decision, and just bam, cut. Even if it's in a different direction, he can hit the cut and bam, go for it. And we saw that in the Panthers 49ers game. It was the 4th-and-1 play. The Panthers basically pitched the ball out to McCaffrey and he scored a touch. It was 4th-and-1. He ended up running for like 20 something yards. He got around Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, these great defenders. He made them look bad. That's how good McCaffrey is. But also factor in, as we talked about, all these other weapons. I mean, And I think that's the biggest thing that honestly, this week or tomorrow against Kansas City and the week after against the Rams, I think what we'll see from McCaffrey are we'll see some runs. We might see some very simple concepts with regards to passing, but I think it's going to be after the bye week. And remember, we have 9 games after the bye week. And after the bye week, initially heading into this year, I'm going to try not to get too sidetracked here. Heading into the season, we were like, oh my God, this second half of the year, it's a really tough stretch. The Chargers haven't looked as good as I thought. The Cardinals haven't looked as good as I thought. The Buccaneers haven't looked as good as I thought. The Saints haven't looked as good as I thought. The Raiders haven't looked as good as I thought. The Commanders are a joke. So the schedule is actually very favorable. Plus, we'll have a guy like McCaffrey more integrated into the offense. But I just think the possibilities are almost endless.
Mhm,
And that's what's going to make it so hard for defenses is that you could even put out, imagine in the huddle, the defense sees
mhm,
use check, McCaffrey, Debo, Kittle, Ayuk. They have in the huddle, they have no idea where anyone's going to line up, what the play call is going to be, and we can do a lot of different
mhm.
things there. So that's the beauty of a guy like Christian McCaffrey. With Jeff Wilson Jr., I know he was an okay receiver. Running back, he's an okay running back, but now we have an elite guy, and
Mhm.
I think it changes a lot of things.
Yeah. All right. So now we're gonna move on to now to his career. Uh, Here we go. So now we're gonna look at his career. These are his stats, and of course, I'm just basically gonna just read them out. But the biggest one is the 2020-2021 season. So it basically he started 42 starts, played 48 games. You see, how he was used in Carolina. Back-to-back seasons with over 100 catches, one season with 1,000 receiving yards. So that is why we're going to talk about the next thing. But you see how he was. He was a bell cow. He was a wide receiver and a running back bell cow. He basically was the offense. Here's the thing: why a lot of people like myself am worried about in 2020. Okay, it wasn't a good year, for anyone. He missed 13 games. But even there, he was still rushing for almost 20 carries. And he was averaging almost 6 catches per game. So he's basically running the ball 20 times in 3 games, and he was catching the ball like a receiver. So in basically in 3 games, he had uh, almost 80 touches. That's a lot when he got injured. Then you go in the following season, he missed 10 games because the 17 game schedule, but he was still being used a lot in those 7 games. This year, now you look at 2022, has started every game, but you see he is still the offense. So I want to get your thoughts by looking at the stats. Do you think his numbers are going to go down under Kyle Shanahan? And do you worry sometimes that he was overworked?
I worry in some ways that he was overworked in Carolina. I mean, that 2019 season is crazy. I mean, you look at almost 1,400 yards rushing, over 1,000 yards receiving, 19 touchdowns. That's insane. That's like almost MVP caliber type season. But and I love that you touched on the 2020 season because he only played 3 games, and you talked about the stats: how many rushes per game, how many receptions per game. But in 3 games, do you see how many touchdowns he had? He had 6 touchdowns in 3 games. That's 14 points a game in those 3 games. Now, I don't really remember Carolina in 2020 because I know that we were hurt really bad with injuries. I'm going to assume that McCaffrey picked up an injury, and then it was probably maybe like a high ankle sprain, and then it ended up being like, well, now he's done for the year. But I think that I don't know if he's not going to get the volume of touches that he got in Carolina, because you have to think about it. Even after the bye week, we are going to use Elijah Mitchell. Like, Elijah Mitchell still has value. We might sprinkle in Jeff Wilson Jr. or Tevin Coleman here and there, So I don't know if his total touches and if his total yards are going to be, they're not going to be the 2019 numbers. The difference is, I think with McCaffrey now, it's going to be more about quality as opposed to quantity. Is he getting those like 4 or 5, maybe like 5 yards per carry? Is he getting those? It's 3rd and 5. He splits out. He is a linebacker covering him. He can get free and pick up 6 yards, keep the drive extended. That's where I think the key is for a guy like Christian McCaffrey, where I'm not expecting him to come in and have, the next 2, 3 years, even. I'm not expecting him to have 1,300 rushing yards, 1,000 receiving yards. I just want him to help the offense keep, extend drives, score more points. And I think he's going to do that.
True, true, true. And again, Debo and our other running backs, as I mentioned, uh, in Carolina, he was basically their all-purpose player. Their all-purpose player. I think if Kyle, hopefully he's not his ego way, does not run this kid to the ground. Okay, if you're gonna play this kid in the short amount of time, because there's a possibility he's gonna be running, you need to uh, basically give Wilson some time. When Elijah Mitchell comes back, share the rock. Don't overwork him and use Debo. With all the talent that we have now in the backfield, now Debo can be an asset of running the football to keep this kid off uh, from being worn out. And we still have to be worried about those touches. But if somehow he doesn't work out with us and he plays all the 11 games and he's able to do what he's able to do, then maybe it was Carolina's fault. And of course, we found out a few weeks ago that they have a turf field. So that could be why he missed a lot of games. All right. So now let's talk about the pros and cons. Basically, the pros is he's a top tier runner and pass catcher. No one can basically deny that. He's a good top tier. The word top tier, not number one, not at the bottom, but top tier pass catcher and runner. Cons, of course, his injury history we just talked about, and the draft pick. So, Shifty, uh, do you agree with these pros and cons? Are there any other pros and cons that you want to spotlight?
Okay. I think what you said is perfectly accurate. Nothing wrong with that. I'd like to add a couple of things in terms of pros. Let's not forget we have him under contract through 2025. Not only that, Christian McCaffrey is 26 years old. So we'll have him up to when he's about 30 years old. So it's not like we're stuck with him until he's 34 or something crazy like that. But it's also when you factor in the trade, a lot of times when these guys get traded, it's like the last year of their deal. People talk about like, oh, we should have traded for Brian Burns. And it's like, well, in 1 year's time, we'd have to give him like $25, $30 million a year. Whereas Christian McCaffrey, we already at minimum have him locked up for the next 3 years. And in my opinion, from how I'm no cap expert, but it actually seems like the 49ers will also be able to restructure his deal for the next few years that will actually reduce his cap hit fairly significantly. So we'll have a top tier running back to go along with everything else. Now, and that's a huge pro because I think, and I know a lot of people, and it's very easy to say, well, this move is all in for this year to win a Super Bowl. But I also think, well, we talk about, how about next year? Trey Lance, imagine in the backfield, Trey Lance, Christian McCaffrey, Debo, all these like Kittle, Ayuk, all these guys. So it's also a move for the future. Now, when you look at the cons, is can we get that restructured contract? We gave up quite a few draft picks. I won't doubt that. But if we, and I think the other thing to add there is his contract. Will it prevent us from signing someone else long term? I don't think so. I think this is something that was very carefully studied by the front office. I don't think anyone said, you know what, we're going to trade for a guy that we don't really know, and that's going to cause us to not be able to sign Brandon Ayuk for a long-term deal. I don't think anyone in the front office is thinking like that. And if they are, then they shouldn't be there. Honestly, I think the 49ers, and I know some people are critical, oh, the Niners don't sign the big players and stuff. And it's like, every great player that we've drafted, we've signed them. That's kind of the crazy thing to me. Fred Warner, George Kittle, Debo Samuel. We're going to sign Nick Bosa. We signed Trent Williams, Kyle Juszczyk we brought back. So this organization does dish out money to the players who've earned it.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I think it's really going to come down to, you know, we did give up a lot of draft capital, and I can understand why people think it's too much. Initially, when I saw what we gave up, I was like, whoo, that is a lot. Like a second, a third, and a fourth, and then a fifth the year after. But I do also think about it where, I mean, I think the Niners' thought process, and I always try to get into the thought process of what a guy like John Lynch is thinking. Well, bringing in McCaffrey, like if we're a playoff team, like that second round, it's going to be an end of a second round pick. That third round pick, end of the third round. We already have 2 third round compensatory picks. We'll maybe get another one if D'Amico Ryans gets hired as the head coach. So they're probably thinking, okay, well, if we trade for McCaffrey, if we go to the playoffs, maybe win the Super Bowl, that could be the end of the third round, that third round pick. But we already have 3 compensatory picks. So that's like kind of not giving up anything.
Yeah.
Um, but it's going to come down to what's the real impact that McCaffrey's going to have. Can he
Mhm.
stay healthy? And then long term, what's his contract going to look like? And going forward, can he stay healthy? And that's really the big thing. That's why it is a risk. It's a gamble. When you like when the Rams traded for Matthew Stafford, when they traded for Von Miller, what if the Rams traded for Matthew Stafford week 1 through no fault of anyone, he tears his ACL? Then obviously it doesn't work out, but that didn't happen. So if McCaffrey stays healthy, then, and I think you have to act in reality and act in the current situation. And while I wish we gave up less, of course, but I think that it's worth it considering our Super Bowl window really is in the this year, next year, and the year after.
Mhm. 100% true. And I want to put back the pros and cons again when it comes. You talked about it. Yeah, he has 2 more years left on the contract that he was given. So if they're like, all right, we're going to keep him till his contract runs out, you're basically saying that basically this could be his final stop because we don't know how he's going to be by the end of the contract. So that is a really, really good positive for us that, I did not see coming. So we'll see what happens. But I will disagree with you when it comes to the draft picks. So Bill Belichick was a good example. Always traded down. I remember for 5 years, from 2014 to 2018, he traded his first round down to get more third round picks, more fourth round, an additional second round pick, and he packed the picks up because the more picks you have, the more chances you get to earn great great picks. Now, here's the upside. So while we did give up a lot, we have compensatory picks. If we have 2 compensatory picks, we don't have a fourth round, fifth round, and we have a bunch of sixth and seventh round, you can still move up into the second round if you are smart enough. We won't be able to move up to the first round, but if we're able to get maybe a late second round or a super early third round selection with the compensatory picks and extra picks, that's really good. But right now, it's a little bit too much for McCaffrey, in my opinion. I would never ever trade a lot for that. Now, the Niners are betting on themselves. And I said this on my stream on Friday that it's a Russian roulette table. You're gambling your money, hopefully to get a bigger payout. So that's my thoughts on
Now,
that. Yeah.
and I think I don't disagree with you. Like we definitely gave up a lot of draft picks. When I saw it, I was like, this is a lot to give up, especially for a running back where typically we can find those guys later in the draft or undrafted. I do, and let me pose a question to
Mhm,
yourself. What if the Rams traded for McCaffrey?
mhm.
And if
So,
they gave up, let's say next year they gave up like a second, third, fourth, but now the Rams have Christian McCaffrey, Cooper Cup, and all those guys and their defense. But if the Rams got Christian McCaffrey, you would have to say that, and the Rams are now on a bye week. So if the Rams traded for him, they would have a whole week and a half to basically get him into the offense. And you know who he would face? It would be the 49ers coming off that bye week. But if the Rams traded for McCaffrey, they probably become the favorites in the division, right?
mhm. So if the Rams would have drafted McCaffrey, I think I think they finally would have a complimentary runner for Matthew Stafford, and that would be scary. So I'm glad that we pick him up. Like, and unfortunately, we did have to, give up a lot. But I remember in the 2018 offseason, we jumped in to get a D Ford. That didn't work out, but you saw how the Niners jumped in there. During the season, they learned that we don't have a number one wide receiver, and they jumped in and got Emmanuel Sanders. I think this is, probably better than the Emmanuel Sanders trade. So I think the Niners are like, you know what? We're 3-3. A lot of our players are getting hurt, but we need to find somebody. And I think this pick and why we brought Christian McCaffrey is that Kyle, I think, is tired of using the second rate. And again, I don't think Elijah Mitchell's second rate. I don't think Wilson and TDP, but they're all inexperienced. So they're trying to bring in McCaffrey so they can continue to develop the running backs because he's starting to realize, okay, our running backs are getting hurt. We need to bring somebody in. And I think that's what they did. They brought in McCaffrey. So I'm glad he's on our team. And again, just because I think they gave up too much does not mean I don't want him. I'm glad he's on this team. And I think Kyle is going to start to realize I don't want to hurt my running backs no more. I think he finally woke up and realized let's get someone and McCaffrey who wanted to come back here to the Bay Area. So I agree 100% that it's better that he's on our team than with the Rams.
Especially compared to the Rams. Now, I do want to throw something out there. And like while you were talking, and you made a bunch of like really, really good points, but something also came across my mind. So, the 49ers, yeah, we're 3-3. I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to be 3-4 after the game against Kansas City. I mean, to me, if I was a betting man, I would bet on Kansas City to beat us. They're probably a better team, but we'll see how it plays out. Maybe we beat them, but long term, I think the second half of the season now has become very winnable. A lot of teams we thought were going to be really tough are not that great, but also I think that this season, who's like the biggest competition in the NFC this year? Probably the Philadelphia Eagles, number one, because the Eagles are undefeated and they're looking good. But still, when I watched the Eagles against the Cowboys, they went up 20-0. The Cowboys came right back. The Cowboys just didn't have Dak Prescott, so they couldn't end up winning the game. But I think it's a case of like, it makes the 49ers better, of course, right now. But I also think it's a case of the fact that a lot of our players who are hurt, and we have a lot of guys who are hurt, are going to be coming back. Very few of these injuries are season ending. Emmanuel Mosley is season ending. Of course, Trey Lance. But outside of that, we're expecting Elijah Mitchell back after the bye. Me personally, I think Eric Armstead after the bye week, he'll have another 3 weeks to try and get healthy. And I think that he will be out there, especially towards the end of the season. But I just think that we're looking around the NFC and it's like, okay, like really, who is like the big competition? If the 49ers are relatively healthy, who's the competition in the NFC? It's Philadelphia. The Cowboys have played very well, especially without Dak Prescott, but I still think they're very beatable. The New York Giants, who I think, they're having a great year. And I know that you picked them as a dark horse to be very good this year. And that was a great call because they've been playing very well. But I think they're like a year away from being contending for a Super Bowl. You look at some of the other divisions, Green Bay not playing well. They just lost to the Jets. They got destroyed by the Jets at home. The Vikings, they're 5-1, but they've won like 3 or 4 of their wins have just been by like a slight margin. So, and I think we look around the AFC South. The Falcons beat us fair and square, but we were absolutely devastated with injuries. So I think it's also a case of we're looking around the NFC and we're thinking the NFC, we're not in the AFC. We don't like to get to the Super Bowl. We don't have to go through Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, all these guys. We don't have to go through that. So I think now is the time to strike where the NFC isn't that great. I think, and that's why I'm warming up to the move a lot more because I think around the landscape of the NFC, I think they're like, yeah, we can get to the Super Bowl right now. Why not go all in? If we get to the Super Bowl and if we win the damn Super Bowl, we all know this trade, no matter what happens after this season, is absolutely worth it.
Yeah. So I'm going to answer these questions very quickly. But thank you for all the great questions. Of course, we can't go on forever, but I love the question. I will say this. I will say this. The Eagles, you talked about it. They have an easy schedule. They can run the table because, of course, they have an easy schedule. The Vikings, I don't know much. Like I felt that they were going to win the division. Uh, the Bucks, the Packers, the usual suspects. I don't know. Something's wrong with the Rams. The Rams are not good. A team that am going to worry about, and maybe it's because maybe I'm just being a little bit too nice to them. The Seahawks have been playing really good football. Now, I don't know how long it's going to keep going on. The 49ers are the best team with a 3-3 record. So, again, it's still too early, but by the next 4 weeks, we'll find out who are the real contenders or pretenders. So, uh, that's just my thoughts about that stuff. But Shifty, great questions, great stuff as well, and I really appreciate you hopping on the show. But before we go, let the fans know one last time where they can find you. Talk about your channel.
Shifty 49ers talk, 49ers content creator. I put out multiple videos every week. I also stream the games live, which is a ton of fun. I encourage anyone who watches this to at least come by the stream and check it out because we have a great time when we watch the game. And I have a Twitter, it's Shifty 49ers talk, Instagram, Shifty's 49ers talk. And basically, any news, breaking news, I'll cover that. My thoughts on the team, the direction of the team, and of course, previewing the game, and then, of course, breaking down the game after that. But yeah, that's what I do. 49ers in and out. I'm also a big Bay Area fan. We got the Warriors, got the Sharks
Oh yeah,
over here, and San Francisco Giants fan. But this channel primarily 49ers based.
yeah. So check out Shifty 49ers talk as well. Shifty, thanks for hopping on. I know we had to do a special show because I know you did not want to wait until Thursday. I appreciate you hopping on, man. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday and enjoy the football game. But with that said, I'm John Jay. I'm on this side now. I'm on this side for whatever. And Shifty's over there on this side. Shout out to my boy Shifty. You have a good rest of your Saturday and go 49ers.